Top of the morning to you, vinyl community. It's Mazzy here, and this is somewhat of not a response, but a continuation of a new thread. Maybe it'll be a thread, but Richard McCook celebrating his 1 year in the vinyl community, making vinyl videos. Posted something this morning, and it's a holiday here in the USA, so I'm off work and I'm going to make a video. I don't need a day off excuse to make a video. But you know I'm a Beatle collector, big Beatle freak, but I'm not a Beatles channel. There are 3,476.5 Beatle channels out on the YouTube in the YouTube community, and I ain't one of them. But I like to sprinkle them in whenever possible. But anyway, Richard McCook, congratulations on being around a year. It's about when I kind of really started seriously doing my videos. I had a channel with one video up there, and maybe a little over that. Then I kind of did a hiatus and came back gangbusters. So maybe a year and a half for me. So his thread is ranking the UK Beatle albums from the end to one. But of course, I have to do mine slightly different, and I'm going to cheat a little bit just because I think I'm going to do the John Lennon part where, you know, do it my way or no way, as they say. As I say. I always say as they say. That makes no sense. Just like digital gramophone makes no sense. Anyway, I love the Beatles. It's my collection. If you watch us from the beginning to the end, it won't be too long. Halfway through, I'm going to just showcase my collection here. Just do a little overview of my record Beatle wall here. Of just the records. Because I have books and all other crap. So, what I'm using as a framework is one of my blue boxes. If you don't know about the blue box, this one is not the numbered one. It was, let's see. Yeah, this is not numbered. I feel spoiled. I have 3 of these boxes of stereo, and it's a long story to why I have 3. Plus I have a box, I had an empty blue box, and all my mono UK albums are in that. I'm not using that as a reference. One of which of these of the stereo boxes was numbered. These came out in the late 70s to the early 80s, and what they really were, they weren't special pressed for a box set like all these album boxes that are coming out now from artists. They took off the shelf basically whatever pressings they have at the time. So you could really have a blue box with mixed pressings, not necessarily all done at the same time. Some are tube cups, some are solid state cut. You have to really get down and dirty with the matrix numbers, but they're all analog, of course. I'm wearing the 10th anniversary. I'm squeezed into this Beatle t-shirt that Capitol sponsored in the radio station. These were around the country, but locally in San Francisco, and I worked in record stores, KFRC 610, one of the AM station, printed these up in a record stores. We gave them away, and I have one from 1974. So I am a 65-year-old man squeezing into a t-shirt I got when I was 20 years old. Beefcake. Okay, Beatles, UK, the countdown, backwards to top. And again, I am improvising somewhat. Well, it's all improvisation. Okay. And again, their worst is better than most people's best. So this is not saying it's worse, but you know, check out Richard McCook's. Maybe other people jump on this. Again, UK editions. But I'm going to cheat. The last one, I'm starting with, you know, I'm not going to say number 11 because you'll see why. And, well, we'll just move on. Great cover photograph by Robert Freeman. Been parodied so many times. Better, I agree with Richard. This is better than the blue printing on Meet the Beatles, but that's a special album for us Americans. I forgot. He also calls out his best and worst song from each album, so I think I'll do that. So, my best song on with the Beatles, I'm going to give it to Hold Me Tight. Hold Me Tight. The worst song is Till There Was You. I do have a soft spot for that. But from the Music Man, really, Paul sang it on Ed Sullivan's show. From the Broadway musical, The Music Man. There were bells on a hill. All right. Next is, God, now I'm changing my mind as I go along. Let It Be. I do like Let It Be quite a bit. In fact, it's a great record. You know, I don't even mind the Phil Spector record. McCartney didn't like all the lush vocals and overdubs, and this was raw, and they were splitting up. My favorite song on this album is Across the Universe. I said that's one of the best lyrics, even though it was recorded earlier. There's so many different versions of that. But I'm going to also put Dig a Pony on there too. I love that song. It's so great. I would say my least, I Got a Feeling is great too. God, I like this record more. It's a great record, and it's funny when you put a Beatles and you go from the worst to the best. The worst, as I said again, is better than most people's best. You know, I'd say The Long and Winding Road is my least favorite on this. I get it, it's schmaltzy. It was going to be the name of the documentary that became the Beatles anthology that Neil Aspinall of the Beatles was working on, but Ethan Russell photographs. He photographed the whole thing, the booklet that came with the UK copy. So that's that. Please Please Me, groundbreaking album. I think Richard almost had this last, so I'm up there a little bit. How can you not like this record? But still, I mean, just think of it. Every record, they've never made a bad album. In terms of the best songs, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say the best song is "Please Please Me." You know, I might tie it with "There's a Place." I think the worst song is "Love Me Do." I don't know, "Love Me Do." Dun. I don't know. I get it. I love the Beatles, baby. But hey, baby, I'm talking like Murray the K now. Hey, baby, I love the Beatles, baby. "Love Me Do." Really? Okay. I don't even know what numbers we're doing, so we're just going back to top. But they are in order. Beatles for Sale. I tell you, this was low on Richard's list, but I tell you, the opening of No Reply, that haunting opening to me, is a fucking fantastic opening to any album ever. I would list that high on there. In fact, I'm going to put No Reply as the best song on the album. And God, I mean, this is a really good record. Obviously, it's a version of rock and roll music, but I'm not going to add any cover songs to my best or worst list. It's not fair. You know, I'm a big fan of Mr. Moonlight. Everyone hates Mr. Moonlight, it seems like, but I love that. That's a cover song anyway. I would say What You're Doing is a great song. God, this is a great fucking record. I'm going to say, oh, God. Oh, I can't even say it, you know? You know, maybe Mazzy's going to pass on this one. I love the covers on this. These are great rock and roll covers. I know that's not fair. Again, a Robert Freeman cover photograph. I copped out. Mazzy copped out. We're getting up there with Help. Great song. I'm picking for the best song on the album. Probably You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, and then Help. Those are the greatest songs on this record. I would say the least favorite song is Tell Me What You See. Still a great song, but the least favorite. Again, more photographs by Robert Freeman, 1965. Hard Day's Night, Robert Freeman also designed and helped in Hard Day's Night the closing credit sequence. Took these great pictures. Best song on this record, I'm going to say Hard Day's Night. What a great chord opening. Everyone tries to figure out what that friggin' chord is. Great record, great song. I would say maybe When I Get Home is my least favorite song on this album. But what a great record. And again, as Richard said, and we all know, first record the Beatles did of all original songs, no cover songs. Okay, here's where I'm going off course a little bit. Okay, Rubber Soul, great record, breakthrough record, considered the first album by an artist without having their name on the cover. Didn't say the Beatles, but I'm going to argue that typical thing that some people argue, that the American version is the better track list. Not as many songs, but it has more of acoustic feel. So instead of Drive My Car, it starts out with I've Just Seen a Face. And the stereo version of this has a extra guitar intro. So the stereo of the American, unless I'm getting that wrong, but I think it is the stereo, not the mono, has the dun 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 false start, and then it starts again. So those of you who want different variations need the American stereo version of Rubber Soul. I'm convinced this is more of acoustic Americana kind of folky album in the sense of like Bob Dylan, that kind of period. Beautiful record. Not knocking this. This is the way the Beatles intended. So, you know, it's what the artists go for, what the artists want. What a great thing. Another great photographs by Robert Freeman. But I'm throwing this in there as a, throwing the wrench in the works. But I do like the orange pop there instead of this. So, there you go. You know, I should have showed this before, but one thing I'm going to throw in there as one of their best albums, and, you know, people are going to come with pitchforks to me, is the Beatles' second album. One as in Mazzy may argue that this is the best rock and roll album the Beatles ever did. Just even though it's a comp, it's a hybrid bastardization put together by Dave Dexter at Capitol Records of the Beatles. Starts out with Roll Over Beethoven, Thank You Girl, You Really Got a Hold on Me, Devil in Your Heart, Money, You Can't Do That, Long Tall Sally, I'll Call Your Name, Please Mr. Postman, I'll Get You, She Loves You. I would say I'll Get You and Thank You Girl are my favorite songs on here, and probably I Call Your Name the least favorite, although I do like that song. Mamas and Papas did a nice version of it. I showed this before on other videos, but the great rock critic and rock writer Dave Marsh, used to be for Rolling Stone, puts together the 500 best Rolling Stone rock and roll songs, records of all time. All those lists. He has a great vlog, whatever. Dave Marsh did this album, did this book called the Beatles' second album, and he argues what a friggin' great record the Beatles' second album is. And this is written like an essay. It's not a very long book. It's I don't know how many pages, 100 pages it is, but the Beatles' second album runs only 22 minutes with just 11 songs, many of which the group didn't write. Despite that, the album personifies the Beatles, the world's greatest rock and roll band, according to rock and roll critic and author Dave Marsh. With its overload of rock and roll, R&B, and early soul influence, the Beatles' second album offers a great vantage point from which to see the group's enormous impact on pop music and culture. He really gets in about the details and the history and this album. So if you don't think the Beatles' second album is a great album, I advise you to find this book, download it wherever you can, read it. It's a great read, well written, and then play Beatles' second album and tell me differently. Okay. Richard also said, I ain't having no Magical Mystery Tour. That's not a real album. It was an EP, and it was a comp, and it was this. Always excuses, man. You know, UK people are just so jealous that we did it first. No, I jest here. But Magical Mystery Tour. Magical Mystery Tour. It's in their canon now. It was in the box sets. It's a part of the canon. Now, this is a UK version that came out later. We all know the yellow cover that came out in America with a booklet inside. And side one are the tracks from the motion picture. Side two are the, oh wow, I think I'm wrong here. I think this is, oh, this is a German one. Yeah, this is a German one. But side two are the singles gathered together. One of the greatest psychedelic albums of all time. It's an amazing record. You need to find the, not this one, but the German Horzu. If you really want the best sounding album with the true stereo, and I'm getting all the well, I can't find it right now. Is that it? Anyway, you get the picture. The Horzu one has the true and the extra intro beat to "I'm the Walrus." Now, in terms of me, every song on here is amazing. I would say the best song on the album, though, is "Strawberry Fields Forever." One of the greatest songs, and I'd like to tell a whole story of that song someday on here. I'm the Walrus is pretty great too, and of course, All You Need Is Love. John Lennon really has some great songs on this record, and Baby You're a Rich Man. Oh my God, you know, Blue Jay. I like Blue Jay Way. Maybe I'll throw Flying in under the bus on this one. I love Flying, and it's part of a longer set. If you know the movie, it's sort of incidental music. I wish when they were expanding or doing these expansions, I was hoping for a really long version of Flying beyond what we've heard. But I'm going with that. I'm counting it. Okay, climbing up the charts. We're getting now into the top 4. Before we get in the top 4, here's my Beatle collection. So as an interlude, here is my Beatle collection. This is just our halfway point on this rating the UK Beatle albums, Mazzy's Cheater Edition. There is American and UK copies. These are bootlegs. These are Japanese, and then there's bootlegs. These are the rest of the UK, plus Russian, plus Italian and French, and more Japanese, and South American, and Venezuelan, and whatever else, miscellaneous countries. And there's some of the collections, bootleg collections. Then there's John Lennon. And then there's more John Lennon. And there's Paul McCartney. And there's Paul McCartney and Wings. And then there's, out of order again, but the beginning of George Harrison with the Traveling Wilburys, the end of the McCartney archive sets, and there's more McCartney and too much McCartney, so fucking much McCartney. And then there's more George Harrison with Bangladesh. And then there's Ringo. Ringo's got a little section in there of all his stuff. Then there's the family, what I call the family records. There's Yoko Ono catalog. There's George Martin. There's Sean Lennon, Julian Lennon, all the families. And then we get into Scaffold, which is Mike McCartney, and the records and comedy records. And then there are the entire Apple catalog in Apple order. That includes everyone from Badfinger to Radha Krishna Temple to Ravi Shankar and more and more and more. David Peel, that's later actually. Then there's Splinter, which was George Harrison's label on Dark Horse Records. Splinter and Five Stair Steps and other bands. George and Ravi Shankar Family and Friends. Then there are more things like more Badfinger and David Peel. Then these are all comps, basically cover records, I should say. Everybody from The Residents with a cover parody to George Martin, more George Martin, to Chet Atkins and Keely Smith, anyone covering Beatles music. Just bizarre stuff too. Also, the fabulous worst movie ever made, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band with the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton. my box sets. Now, one of these box sets was from an empty blue box, but it has all the 70s UK mono records in it. I have 3 blue boxes of stereo. It's a long story. I have a Japanese box. The green one there is a French box. Obviously, there's the mono box. There's the anthology laserdisc version. There's the Beatles stereo reissue box. The reissue box is there. There's the roll-up that came out with the UKs. I'm not going to roll it up right now. There's the MoFi box, which I'm not really a fan of, but I have to, of course, I have to keep it. MoFi, I don't think these really sound that great. Some people love them, but, you know, to their own devices, as they say. And there we go. There is the Beatles section of records. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. All right, top 4. The top 4 Beatle UK albums. We went from the bottom to the top. A personal preference. Everyone's going to argue and bitch about this is better, that doesn't count. You can't count Magic Mystery Tour. You can't throw a friggin' American album in there. I can do whatever I want. This is my channel. Neener, neener, neener. Number 4. I know this is number 1 for a lot of people, but Abbey Road. I mean, a perfect record, really. And doesn't mean number 1 has to be totally perfect, or even number 2 or 3. But I'm putting this at number 4. And of course, if I make this list in a year, or if I had picked this list 10 years ago or back in the day, I might have changed this differently. You all know I don't have to say anything about it. I would say, you know, I'm going to kind of agree with Richard. Here Comes the Sun might be the best, but also Because. Here Comes the Sun and Because are my 2 favorite tracks on this album. And I would say Octopus's Garden is my least favorite. It's not just because it's Ringo. I know Ringo gets a bad rap. You know, a little kitschy, a little novelty-like. But Abbey Road. Number 3. I know this is a lot of people's number 1 or number 2, Sgt. Pepper. Probably the most important pop album ever made. I'm not going to deny that. Probably the greatest album cover ever made. Parodied by many times. Great concept. I really agree with Richard when he says, you know, you really can't, if you take any of these songs and put it on a comp, it doesn't work like in any other album. You can kind of mix them around. But it's really hard. This really is cohesive. You know, no, maybe not the complete concept album from A to B to Z. That's fine, doesn't really matter. But it's such a wonderful album. I remember getting this album. What I'll say about this album is, when it came out, I was at this record store, my local record store that had instruments and records, and I knew this was coming out. I went there and waited for, I don't remember in those days, was there UPS in those days? For the truck to come. And they got 2 boxes in. They got 1 box mono, 1 box stereo. So I would think that's 25 copies for one little store in the day. Maybe they got more. But I remember the guy, Pete, who was the manager of the store, to this day I remember it. 1967, June of 1967, they're opening the boxes. And I wanted a stereo copy. I know, looking back now, a lot of people want the mono. Hey, I'm a stereo fan. I like the originals. I know they're not centered vocals and everything. Everyone loves these remixes. I'm going with the original stereo. This one. I grabbed a copy and I bought it the day my store got it in when I was a kid in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. But great album. I think the highlight of this album, the best song, best record recording on this album, is A Day in the Life by far. And I love Within You Without You. A lot of people didn't get the Indian thing, but I grabbed onto that right away. I really like that. I would say it's hard to pick a least favorite on this one. You know, Little Help My Friends, everyone loves that song. I might pick that. It works with the context of the album, so you can't take it off the album. And this little trick about our least favorite song. Doesn't mean we're taking it off. It works. I love it on here. But Sgt. Pepper. Okay, number 2 and number 1. The White Album, number 2. What can I say? The White Album. Double album. You know, there's arguments from some people. Oh, it should have been a one. I think even George Martin at one point, or many points, said, well, it could have been a great one album. It's a fucking great double album. Best song on the album. God, it's hard to pick one song. It could be Happiness is a Warm Gun for me. It could be While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Could be Revolution 1, Cry Baby Cry. I know it's hard to pick one. My least favorite, that's an easy one for me. In fact, my least favorite Beatles song of all time is Don't Pass Me By Ringo. And I like the country flavor of it. Actually, there's a version on was it a new album? I'm trying to think, it was a new album or the last album? Well, maybe this is Ringo's solo album. There's a version of it that's really good. Actually, it bests the version on here in my opinion. Anyway, Beatles White Album, number 2. Closing out, it's kind of the cliche album to say it's number 1, but it's still my favorite. We're not saying best here in the grand scheme of things. Our personal opinions is Revolver. Klaus Voormann does this amazing cover in 1966. The sound of this was so different. In terms of best songs on this album, I could go with, oh God. I mean, again, this is a hard one. I could go with Eleanor Rigby because it was so different. Of course, that's only Paul, no other Beatles on it. Taxman's great. I'd say the worst song is Yellow Submarine. I like it, fun song, novelty again. And everyone's going to probably think I'm picking on Ringo here. But For No One and Your Bird Can Sing are 2 great songs. And I am a fan of Tomorrow Never Knows. To me, this is almost perfect album. Yellow Submarine brings it down a notch. But again, as I said, Robert Whittaker took that photograph, who took the Butcher Cover album photograph. So anyway, that's my top UK albums with a few side trips showcasing. The one extra thing I'm going to throw in here, just because I know Richard, and I kind of agree with him, we didn't include Yellow Submarine for a lot of reasons, even though it is canon of theirs. But I would say one of the best, also second best psychedelic album, or third they did, again, maybe doesn't count, but is the Yellow Submarine song track. I love the mix. These are all remixed. I love the remixes on this better than the Giles Martin newer remixes of those last 3 albums for some reason. I just love the sound of this. And what surprised me on this album, well, I love Baby a Rich Man, so I'm going to probably say that's number 1, even though, and Nowhere Man. But to me, Baby a Rich Man, Nowhere Man, and It's All Too Much. The extended All Too Much sounds fabulous on this record. This was a song track, was it in 1999, remix version, made it a full album of Beatles songs with when the re-Beatlized version of Yellow Submarine came out. So that's Mazzy's take on what Richard McCook showcased, and what are your top Beatle albums from the end to number 1? Mazzy loves you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.